Call the meeting to order. Nice to see you all again. We've got Phil Pufford and Dave Deaver on the line. And I thought we'd just start right off with a guest speaker. Kevin, you were just talking about that. You said, let's talk to the Groton Fire Department and Marine Police Unit. And we certainly had the Marine Police Unit planned. And it's something we do every year, although you haven't done it with us before. And we literally just like to touch base. We'd love to hear how your season started. I'm Bill Cavers, by the way, the chair, interim chair. I don't know, maybe we'll just all quickly introduce ourselves and then we'll get into some of your observations on the water.
I'm Rob Roberta.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Lori Borum, Chair of the Parks and Recreation Commission.
Hi. David Coon.
Julie Jones.
Julie.
Sam Bridges.
Bill Wright.
Bill.
Kevin Marks.
Kevin, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
And hiding in the back, you know John Keenan, I assume?
How are you?
So we've just traditionally had either, it's sometimes been the end of season, sometimes it's been the beginning, sometimes it's been in the middle of winter. But the point has always been, let's keep in touch with your priorities on the water and concerns and what we may be able to do sort of back on the policy side of the town to help you out. And you're welcome back here at any time. You sit as an ex officio member of it, so literally you are welcome to come and sit and join us at any time. But you know, once or twice a season is just fine also. So I don't know. Maybe just your observations of how the season's starting and what you see as concerns and issues out there.
I mean, I don't have anything formal. I figured I'd just talk about it, you know. So just to kind of reintroduce myself, my name is James Palmer. I've been with Darien PD for, I think, like I said, going on 15, 16 years. I was on the Marine Division for years, till a couple of years ago. I was just sort of a part-time fill-in after that. But at the end of last summer, with Lieutenant Mulcahy being promoted, I took over the boat again. So that's sort of where I come from as far as my background with the police department. So as far as this season goes, you know, last season I wasn't overly involved till the end, so I couldn't speak too much to how that season went. But one thing that we are sort of starting this season off with that happened quite a few times last season is we're making a big push for life preservers this year, because we had several incidents last year, one or two that I was involved with, where we had people, fatalities just from, you know, guys out there in the off season in the cold water fishing and their boat goes over. You know, they ended up coming off the water alive but then passing away just from hypothermia. So we're trying to make a big push. It's your typical, you know, 3 guys in a small, you know, outboard motor boat, fishing off the rocks. It could be, you know, in our waters, Stanford, but so we're going to try to make a big push to contact those guys this year and do a little bit of a better job enforcing, number one, whether they should even be out on the water, but most importantly, to get them life preservers if they need them. We're going to try to procure a bunch and keep them on board to hand out if need be. So that's sort of our big safety push this year. Like I said, we had a couple incidents last year where people unfortunately succumbed to the cold water in the off season. So that's sort of our big push coming off the season so far. It's been busy. I don't work, I'm not a regular working member of the division, but I probably 2-3 times a month you know, if you're out there, you'll see me. So I am going to try to stay a little more involved as a supervisor. So far this year, it's been pretty fairly run-of-the-mill as far as the number of boats out there. It's early, you know, people got out there for the long weekend. Not too much going on as far as you know, erratic operation or anything like that I've heard of from the guys. So so far so good. And I know I was looking at, I don't know if it was this minutes or a couple meetings ago, one of the big things, or 2 big things that we're kind of focused on this year also, in addition to what I just talked about, is 2 new sort of players to the game this year. Number 1 being Green Ledge Lighthouse and the boats full of people that are going out there and touring. And number 2, the fact that Darien now owns Great Island. You know, and I would look to you guys for sort of guidance on how the town is handling Great Island. I know as of right now probably there isn't much information, but we foresee having to deal with people thinking, well, it's ours now, so we can go on it. And we've dealt with that on the land side already. We have to shag people out of there constantly that think, well, we bought it so we can walk through it. So I see that being an issue. You know, we're always kicking kids off the rocks as it was, but it was a little more cut and dry because it was private property. But now, with it being, you know, quote unquote public property, I think we're going to spend a lot of our time on the bullhorn yelling at kids and adults for that matter, telling them to come down off the rocks. It's not public property. You know, we're going to have that. I think the same battle that we had with Fish Island a few years ago when it changed hands and suddenly people didn't want us enforcing the laws, or I should say, the new owners wanted us enforcing the laws, and that was a change for most people. I think we're going to now have that same battle with Great Island from our perspective.
What is the access rules for Great Island?
Right now, there's no public access, and I don't, I want to speak out of school, I don't know what the immediate plans are for Great Island. I'm not privy to that. I just know that it's out, it's been in the newspapers that the town bought it, so people are going to now view it as open space park property. And it's going to be a tough sell for us because we're going to be out there telling people they can't be there, but the flip side of that coin is, the town did buy it. So it's going to be, I think that's going to be our challenge this year is dealing with that.
So we just put together a memo, and it's more outline form.
I think that's what I was reading that you had emailed.
Yeah, that got to your lap. Then.
Yes,
Good.
yes.
Yeah, so we sent that to the Board of Selectmen and requested an audience on that. We'd love to make sure some things are happening right now.
Yeah.
And I think that's sort of key to stuffing them out before they get into more serious.
I mean, from our perspective, something as simple as signage would help us, something very
Well,
simple.
there is a sign right at the gate there that says no public.
From the water, yeah.
It would perhaps help if you've agreed or roughly agree with the items in the memo. Maybe you would ping Monica and John, who or I can loop you into an email, saying you share some similar concerns.
Yes.
So that might start a conversation.
Brings me to my next point, is whatever you guys need from us, I think we're probably on the same page with all of that. I read it quickly,
Yeah.
but that's going to be, much as you're taking it on, we're going to be taking it on as well this summer, kind of in the moment.
Would you mind if I stitch us together then? And the
Yeah,
email
sure.
I sent to John and Monica, I'll just resend and say we rediscussed at this meeting, and perhaps that gels a quicker conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we've already had, like I said, we've had people walking the property. We had a couple people, or I shouldn't say a couple people, a couple instances where the buildings were broken into, nothing stolen or anything like that. But so people are there. They know that it's, now owned by the town. They know that there's less people there, as far as people living on the property. So I think just that it's common knowledge, I think that's going to be an ongoing thing.
One of the topics we informally discussed is having you guys consider positioning the police boat there as opposed to at the town dock or the boat club. Have you guys considered any of those thoughts?
So there's a couple, I mean, it's definitely been talked about on our end. There's a couple tough things. Number one is, we have no sort of, we have an office at the boat club, which, it's obviously not massive, but it's somewhere for us to kind of operate out of. So we have a difficult time kind of just being at the end of the dock. And the second thing is, because that turns into such a, hangout in the summer, I just don't know logistically if it would be the best thing for us to kind of be stuck in the middle of that. Because we do, we are out there as law enforcement officers, but we generally, a rule of thumb on our part is we're trying to make sure that people are out there enjoying their boats, having a good time. We obviously spend a lot of time swinging through Ziegler's Cove, but I just don't know. I don't know how it would be received either. You know what I mean?
Well, I guess my thought would be is from a presence standpoint, particularly from the onset,
Oh, for sure.
to establish a presence there particularly at this point in time when there is the absence of, as you say, it's a town facility.
Yeah.
It is unsupervised.
Yep.
There are signs on the land side, but it's a large, massive waterfront.
Yeah.
So I'd ask you to give some thought to it now.
Yeah, no, and as we're sitting here thinking, there's nothing saying even if we weren't stationed there full-time, we couldn't spend a lot of time there. If the town were to, the other thing we're going to be wrestling with is the Rome Fire Department's boat is going to be pretty big, at 37 feet. So I'd have to, listen, I'm sure we could tie up there because the former owner had a massive fishing boat tied up there, but it's something that we have talked about, and no one's really fallen either yes or no either way. So, we're open to it.
You've talked about your priorities for the year, including this aspect of life jacket inspection.
Mhm.
Tell me, what are your priorities relative to just monitoring the harbor, Darien Harbor? I mean, I won't use the nomenclature correct, but the harbor that's associated with the boat club.
Yeah.
But just in terms of general patrolling for speeding and wakes,
I mean,
how are you managing that?
that's probably one of the things if I were to say our number one enforcement action is literally yelling at people for creating a wake in the harbor. I know it gets very congested in there in the summer. I haven't, like I said, I'm not out there every day, but I remember in the dead of summer when there's kids on boats going in and out, there's a sailboat race, it can get pretty. I always, to be totally honest with you, I was always surprised we didn't have some sort of incident where, a little sailboat came shooting out from behind a boat and somebody coming in or out, ran into them. That was something that kind of always kept me up at night, so to speak. So it's definitely something, and that's the thing we get the most complaints about too, to be totally honest with you.
I'd love to see that become, your list of priorities for '23, at least at the onset of a season, because I think you set the tone
Yeah.
by your presence.
Yeah.
And I'm confident that between the club, the Norton Yacht Club, and the General Mooring Field, just your presence there
Yep.
is a deterrent towards speeding.
Mhm.
It is a serious accident waiting to happen right now.
I agree.
And that's with, we're post-Memorial Day, we're entering July 4th with the thick of things. So I'd ask you guys to consider your objectives for 2023 as you establish a presence early in the year, so you're visibly seen often. And I think we talked informally, the neighboring harbor, Stanford
Yep.
and Norwalk, I think you know that there is no one going 4.5 miles an hour greater in any of those two harbors.
Mhm.
We are the Wild West.
Yes.
And
No, I agree with you. It is something that we deal with every year.
and so, your support on that one.
Absolutely.
Do you think you have to ticket every now and then to get people to understand?
We
Like,
have.
No, they're brutal.
Yeah,
Ticketing all
we
the time.
have given tickets. I mean, again, we try to do, give people the benefit of the doubt, but I know for a fact that we've given tickets to repeat offenders. And, if I told you the name of the boats, you'd probably recognize, it's the same 10 people.
Yeah.
But yes, we have done that.
But I think the profile has changed, those same 10, last year, the year before, there's a whole bunch of new boaters in the water,
Okay.
whose drill is, it's like a run line between the boat club, the Ziegler's, and that's,
Yeah.
the world is here to there. And many of them they just don't know better.
Mhm.
And as a result, the safety issue, I think it's real.
No, and I'm gonna meet with the guys tomorrow, I want to go over what we talked about here, and I'll definitely convey that to them, that they should be out there doing that.
Yeah, again, tickets, no tickets, you guys make those choices, but as much as you regulate speed in town,
Yep.
the waterway is equally important.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I think the concern about Ziegler's this summer and Great Island is real. We continue to have problems in the parks, especially the Wheat Beach, about late night partying.
I know, that's-
And you guys close it up at 10 o'clock,
Yeah.
people are coming through, we put up a fence off of Brush Island, it's already been broken down like 3 times. We put it up, they break it down. We had a beach cleanup last Sunday, and it was mostly hundreds and hundreds of beer cans, so.
I think your emails end up filtering down to.
They may have, because
Yeah.
because graduation is this week, we've asked for foot patrol after
Yeah.
midnight, frankly. And then coming in, there's a gate off of near water in the bay. But it's been a big problem. My concern is now that, the water's warming up. Let's face it, a lot of us have had teenagers who had access to Makos and aqua sports over the years, that they're gonna go over, tie up
Yes.
in Ziegler's, and then find their way onto the property after dark.
I mean, I'm waiting to come around the corner and see somebody, beach their boat right up at
Yeah,
the beach house
so,
there, We're trying to tie up to the piece of cement there at the end, which
Yeah.
is dangerous in there.
It is, and we have a lot of frustration because of just the litter. After prom night, Wheat Beach was a disaster.
Yeah.
It was an absolute disaster, broken glass everywhere, it was just a mess, and it's really upsetting.
To that point, there's no reason why people can't be below the high water mark, presumably.
No, that's obviously the law, so yeah, that's accurate. I'm thinking more people are gonna, climb up the rocks and start
Yeah.
taking a tour kind of thing.
You just walk along the dock.
And it's tough because we do go through there in our police cars, but there's so many parts of that you'd have to walk
That's big,
to.
yeah.
The safety issue is really paramount, I think. We spent a lot of time last session on what the issues could be, including hearing that there's rebar under some old concrete issue.
I have heard that, yeah.
Without signs, we're gonna need some support on getting signs up there. That's a pretty inexpensive way to do it. Inclusive of that would be, don't come.
Yeah.
You'll get your chance, or something along those lines. So, the other thing I think we should be thinking about is, I don't know what your hours are, so you shut down at 10?
Generally, we work, the general hours, Monday through Friday are 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. We do, like on a holiday or the night of the fireworks, or if we just think that it's going to be a busy night, they'll work later into the night, shift the hours, work late.
Okay.
And you're not working regularly on weekends?
Oh, no, I'm sorry, yeah, I just mean like, that's generally Monday through Friday when it's slower, those will definitely be hours, but we're there on the weekends too.
Yeah.
We're there full-time from just Memorial Day to Labor Day, give or take.
And do you, I'm sorry, I wanted to just ask another question. Given what we've talked about here and last time, since you saw the minutes, how do you anticipate, and how will you enforce, we talked about ordinances, we had a discussion with John about ordinances. If you go into Ziegler's, oftentimes there are 6 boats tied up. We don't know how big those, each, sort of ball on the mooring is. And we're talking about sort of creating some new ordinances and maybe even a special, calling Ziegler's Cove something special. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I know that, and again, I'm just coming back after not being involved with the Marine Division for a few years, but I believe there's a law that there can only be 3 boats on a mooring, and we do enforce that because it gets very congested in there.
Yeah, every time I go there, there's 6, 8.
Yeah.
I'd say observationally,
We'll tell one of them to drop an anchor. You guys can stay tied up and somebody's got to put an anchor down or something like that.
So that would create compliance, I guess.
Yeah. Compliance doesn't make the situation better, I admit, but
But from a compliance standpoint,
Yes.
establishing one anchor.
yeah, you can't just have 6 boats dragging, a mooring ball across the bottom.
Does the statute then,
So ordinances actually say 3 boats. Elsewhere on the town website, and I've read it, and I can't remember where it is, where it says it's okay, you can go to 4 if you drop another anchor over, which I highly discourage. Because with swing, now you'll get an anchor wrapped around a mooring chain, and then you have a real problem. So I know that's on the town website somewhere. So first off, they contradict each other, and I think about dropping an anchor line is just causes more problems than it saves. But one of the things we've been talking about is the 3 on a mooring really doesn't speak to the tackle standards. You never know really what's underneath a mooring ball when you go in there. And you see 4 small boats on a mooring, that's a problem. You see 3 large boats on a mooring, and that's okay. But you might have 2,000 pounds under the small boat and 75 pounds under the large boats. And that's where they get dragged, damaged. There just needs to be more verbiage in the ordinances as far as tackle standards and, what the police and the harbor master can do about raft up.
I agree, because like I was just saying, to tell somebody to drop an anchor is kind of like a Band-Aid. It's not really fixing, we just, again, do try to get compliance with the ordinance, but it's not making it really safer.
it doesn't change the profile?
No.
So if it doesn't change the profile, and we expect more people there, I would think you're gonna get more people there. I think it becomes a more dangerous situation, and I might, if I'm you, I might consider maybe enforcing it more. And despite how hard that is with everyone having a good time, it's
when I
gonna
say
be
that,
very dangerous.
I don't mean at the expense of safety. I just mean, we do our best to, be fair.
Sure.
Like, could we throw them off and, if there's 4 boats, could we throw one of them off? We could, but we usually say, hey, somebody drop an anchor, just things like that.
seems to be more of an ordinance issue than an enforcement then. I mean, if compliance is the requirement, 3, or you can achieve more plus an anchor. And that goes in the category of do we have an ordinance problem? If in fact we want to say that 3 or more is inconsistent with boat safety.
And people know the laws. If we were to tell, if there were 4 boats and we were to tell one of them to untie, they would know that they could drop it. You know what I mean? So it's sort of both. They would know that we'll just drop an anchor instead, so we'd kind of be left without a leg to stand on.
Or ultimately, an anchor with 3 boats or 4 boats is in full compliance, so it's.
Yeah, but again, it's not making the situation any better. I agree.
I don't know inherently why 3 boats in that area is a problem. I mean, from a safety standpoint, and unless it's conditions of, hazardous, bearing conditions, 3 is not a problem. It's just a lot of boats in that area.
Exactly, and like John said, they start dragging things across the bottom. There's a lot of weight.
That's why I would like to introduce into the ordinance giving police discretion, harbor master discretion on the number of boats on a mooring. Now, you might have one corner of Ziegler's where you could have 5 boats on a mooring and it won't be a problem. In other areas of Ziegler's Cove, if it's near the fairway or the navigable channel, it's a nightmare to have even 3 sometimes. So that's why I'm trying to introduce some discretion that you could come in and say, you are obstructing the navigable channel, you are putting the owner's tackle in peril based on the size of the boats.
John,
Yes.
have we ever considered, now that we have an elevated interest in it, dropping, for example, a few mid-channel marks down what you see as the fairway, so that then the police or anyone else could see if they're swinging into the fairway? Because if there was a fairway, a no kidding 30-foot fairway, 2 Makos could pass each other without any problem.
Doesn't leave much room.
It wouldn't leave much room.
Well, no, but I mean, just because we have separate problems, right? We have the problem of too much weight or length for the ground tackle. And then we've got the problem of navigation by others who are coming in or out, which a fairway could alleviate. That's all I'm saying.
We would have a real issue, like you were saying about keeping our boat in there. I mean, sometimes we have to go cranking out of Darien Harbor, and that's scary. To me, that's scary enough with, again, the kids and sailboats, and then you never know who's going to come out of the fields on either side. I mean, to try to come screaming out of Ziegler's to go to an emergency would be downright dangerous for us and everybody else.
I have seen the police boat do it on occasion, and it's not a pretty sight.
No.
Well, either harbor, right?
Yeah.
But the stretch between Boat Club and the mouth of the harbor versus in the Darien Harbor versus Ziegler's Harbor is
Look,
Oh,
the big difference with a police boat screaming at Ziegler's is the rafting up. You don't have the rafting up in the mooring harbor. Sure, it causes disruption, throws a big wash and everything, but if the police have to zoom at Ziegler's Cove with many, many boats rafted up, people are going to get tossed because people are standing on transoms, they're swimming. I just think it's more dangerous if the police need to get somewhere quickly. Leaving from Ziegler's is a lot more dangerous for them. And correct me if I'm wrong, than Darien Harbor.
Yeah, that's what I'm sort of getting at. And I mean, I know, again, when we patrol through there, we have to crawl because, there's people floating on rafts and there's kids in the water, and, so it becomes a real congested place.
Have you seen an
Yeah.
increase this year over last year and the year before of people in Ziegler's?
No, not so far. Like I said, it's pretty par for the course, but it's still early. I know it was busy over the weekend, the long weekend, but that's pretty regular.
The weather hasn't been great either.
The water feels a lot warmer to me than it normally is, and I'm guessing that puts a lot more people swimming in Ziegler's than they normally do.
Just a general no wake zone in Ziegler's might be the interim step.
I spent some time with Dan Eric yesterday, and we talked about a 5-mile-an-hour buoy for Ziegler. We've got 5-mile-an-hour buoys for Darien Harbor, we've got them for Fish Island Harbor, we've got them for Scotts Cove, but we don't have one for the busiest harbor in Darien. And he and I talked about the placement, because one of the things that I see is as people motor into Ziegler's, many of them take a sharp turn to go into the back way go into Scotts, or to actually go in from the west side into the Fish Island Harbor. And what that does is you have a boat going by throwing a big wash, and it sends it straight into Ziegler's. So we were talking about the placement of the buoy where no matter from really which angle you came from, you're guarded by the fact that there's rocks and obstruction on the other side, which you have to be aware of. But the proper placement of a 5-mile-an-hour buoy would slow them down to the point where they wouldn't be able to throw that large wash into Ziegler's anymore.
Predicated on enforcement again.
I was gonna say that would give us a very clean enforcement line too.
Okay. Is that required? Is that within your discretion, the placement?
I work with the cooperation of the police. The actual permit has to be granted by the state, and the permit has to be signed by the first selectman. So I haven't even had a chance to discuss that with her yet. I think I raised it last time we had a meeting. But I feel very strongly that we should have one. I know the previous harbor master talked about it. I heard him reference it in discussion a few years ago, but I guess it just never really materialized. But with the advent of Great Island, I think it's more important than ever.
And actually, Scotts Cove has no wake zone.
Scotts Cove has a 5-mile-an-hour.
The only one that doesn't is
Ziegler's.
Ziegler's.
Yeah.
Statute we just acquired.
Yeah.
Have to catch up.
Yeah, and I think, like you were saying, now that you have even more of an interest in kind of, I could use the word policing that area, because the town is gonna own all that coastline.
Again, to be redundant, forgive me, but with your team's active enforcement, I think you set the tone, even until such time as that voyages or no wake zone is placed in Ziegler's or whatever the steps get there. But within your control now, and your team's control, is active monitoring of the no wake zone condition in the harbor. I mean, I think you set the tone. And if you start to watch the population of boats that come in, there's a greater number of non-Darien residents. If you look at the Stearns, there are a lot more boats from out of town. They're now making their way into our harbor for whatever reason. So again, and they don't always observe
I agree with you.
the regulations.
I'm on the same page with you
Got
there.
it, okay, good.
Can I swing back to the life preservers?
Sure.
So that's an issue that I've got a lot of interest in. I think the fatalities have been in Norwalk and Stamford.
Yeah, we haven't had one in our waters, but pretty close.
So I'll come back to our waters in a second, but do you think there's opportunity to partner with either town on something that might, I don't know, get more of the people at risk here?
I mean, we definitely could. We'd be asking, we'd have to ask them to do, more enforcement with us.
Do you think they're aware enough? Like, are they discussing this as you're discussing
Oh
this?
yeah, we actually, a couple weeks ago, had a big meeting with, Greenwich couldn't make it, just Norwalk, all marine divisions, Norwalk, Stamford, Fairfield, Westport, a bunch of towns. And we all talked about sort of the upcoming season. And that was one of the things we talked about with Stamford, because the fatality that I'm talking about was Easter of last year, was in Darien, Stamford, but Stamford water.
Right.
So it is a discussion that we're having.
Yeah, good.
I think some of these towns have gone so far as securing through grants or however there are life jackets on the dock.
Yeah.
So our equivalent would be as you place life jackets. If you think where the issue lies is the Darien Boat Club or Norwalk Yacht Club or, is to secure life jackets for that. If you think that's the source.
I thought the fatalities like in Norwalk and Stamford have been more like local fishermen going out.
Yes, yeah.
In Darien, I worry about kids, teenagers, just, being what they are, all brawn and no brains early on. And to that extent, do you think we're missing some, or do you think there's some opportunities for us to more broadly get the message across to teenagers early in the season?
I mean, it's, as far as messaging goes, we could do our best, with our public information people to get that message out there from a police department standpoint. One of the things that we probably could do more of are just safety boardings. If kids are out there and they know, because we don't need any reason to stop a boat and do a safety inspection, as opposed to stopping a car for a reason. So I think if the word got out that we're doing safety inspections, people would be more apt to, look under the seat to make sure they have enough life preserve before they head out, because they know we're gonna be checking.
It's huge.
Yeah.
It's it cross, we tick all kinds of boxes by inspection
Yep.
and awareness.
Yep.
Yeah, I think a lot of the kids that I see now early in the season are on paddleboards.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother.
And it seems like there's not a lot of, one thing we tried to do over the past couple of years in sort of an advisory fashion was to tell them that you're still supposed to have a life preserver on a paddleboard in the Long Island Sound.
Yeah, because I'm not sure that people registers the same way
Yeah.
as on a actual craft.
I mean, you'll notice if they rent them in 5 Mile that, they may not have it on, but it's on there. They make them take it, so it'll be on the end of the board or something, but they have to have it.
Yeah.
Are there any, is there any training or demonstration sessions that might be better publicized? Like, do you guys jump in the cold water, dry suits? Is there an opportunity for the town papers to come down and?
So we did, when I used to be on the Marine Division, 4 or 5 years ago, we used to have, once or twice a year, we would go out, all of us, the entire division would go out and basically do some drilling and exercise all our equipment, because, we don't use all of it all the time, so it's good to continue to be familiar with it. So that's another thing I'm trying to get going this year. I'm actually glad you brought it up, is our in-house training, and also training with the Monroe Fire Department, because they're gonna have a pretty significant asset coming on board soon. It's gonna be a heck of a boat, so we're gonna do some training with them as well.
So I wonder if there might be a way to publicize cold water survival and equipment.
Yeah, that we could sort of push out that we did the training and some information to go along with it, sort of thing.
And if that was something you were doing like every spring in April or something, it's a reminder. I'm not thinking the kids catch it as much as maybe the parents catch it.
Yeah.
And then notice that their kids are going out kayaking in early May, and the parents should be on top of that. I don't know, just a thought, if there's some opportunity. I think, we've put out, just recently Jim Furlong here put out new safety warnings on the kayak racks, and so we're trying to get at that ourselves. But, again, I just think of 12, 13, 14-year-old kids, these parents are not watching over them. I don't know if they're seeing those signs, so I'm trying to think of other ways to.
Well, that's the community. That's where I get nervous is, the parents will be at the boat club and the kids take the paddle boards out into the boat field, and I don't want to say it out loud, but the kid come popping out of the side and a boat's coming a little too fast. That's kind of my nightmare. So I totally agree with you.
Well, if there's anything we can help out with on the PR side, I'm not quite sure what it would be, or if you've got an event going on, a training event, and you'd like us to try to round up a newspaper reporter for you, instead of like you trying to figure out who'll come, we maybe could round up that reporter and help write a little article or something in the paper.
Yeah, sure. When we do it, when we schedule it, I'll just keep you in the loop.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
Just trying to leverage the message.
I was just going to add that it may be new, but it may have been around. CETO has introduced sort of like on your honor, borrow, return life jacket program, and it's just a tree that would stand like it was in a retail store. It'd be like a tree with all these different size life jackets on. They're all iridescent yellow. You can't miss them. And you're on your honor to borrow it and then return it when you come back, which I thought was a good idea, because I know from my experiences at the boat club, we're always trying to enforce the rule about children under a certain age going down on the docks, and a lot of times we see them, and we have the lost and found of life jackets that we loan out, but we don't always get them back. Well, we acquire others, but it might be worth a look into this CETO program. I saw it, and I can't for the life of me remember where I saw it.
The fuel docks, they seem
Fuel
to
dock
always,
over
Nora Cove.
I didn't
There's
see
one,
it. I didn't see it there. I saw it somewhere
I
else, but
think I saw one in the dockhouse, Nora
Yep.
Cove.
yeah.
But if you thought of that down at the town kayak rack, like a little tree of arms and a bunch of life preservers, and just said borrow, please return it.
I don't know the details of it. I don't know if there's an investment or it's free of charge or what it is, but I saw it and thought it was a good idea, because there's always somebody coming to the docks without a life jacket if they're, for kids.
Does someone want to take a look into that? I think it's a fantastic idea for planning next to our town kayak racks. If Parks and Rec would think that was a good idea too. I mean, life preservers are going to, at cost, be $25 a piece, and a rack is going to be just wood. I mean, it's a low-tech thing. And even if not used, it sends the message.
Well, if the police are talking about buying some
We were
for their
gonna,
own purposes, and maybe the fire department also, since they go out on rescue missions, maybe there's a bunch of pockets that could be leveraged, buy more, buy them for
Yeah.
less.
we always have a handful, but we're trying to buy a decent amount for this season.
Yeah.
You could also probably ask people to donate. I know I have
Oh, yeah.
4 or 5 in my garage. I'd be happy to.
That's not a
Hand
terrible idea.
over.
Yeah.
Does someone want to take a look
Me
at the
too.
CETO program? And not that we need CETO, but you could look at what their rack is
Yeah.
and get an idea. Any volunteers?
I'm public safety, I'll jump on that one.
That's great.
Say,
Yeah. Just come back maybe
great idea.
what they're doing, what some ideas are, and we could just put it forward to our selectmen.
Well, at least to understand what the choice
What
are.
they're doing.
CETO, I think, is the part of,
Yeah.
or US, there's
Yeah,
a,
great.
might be neat idea.
Yeah, no, I think something in there, it sounds like it all come together as a nice,
Just raising the
Campaign,
visibility.
yeah.
And it's, not quite sure anything works per se, but anything you do to raise the visibility, like the signs and the kayak racks, a newspaper article, anything is good. Just someday there's going to be, those fatalities will be in our coastal area.
yeah.
I'll go back, broken record. I think it's inspection. You'll create the behavior that you inspect for.
I agree.
So if there was a state statute or a federal statute that requires either a kayaker or a paddleboard to have a life jacket on board, then there is.
Mhm.
And if there is, then it's incumbent upon you, and your organization to inspect. I just think the first 30 days of every season, you'll set the tone for the entire year. And when the cold water dissipates, as it is already, it's almost immaterial. The warmth of the water is not the real issue. Do you have enough safety equipment for it?
Yep.
To me, a lot of the danger is in May.
Sure.
With cold water and people maybe having a life preserver but not readily available to the shock. Well, we probably should be letting you go. I guess, do we have any more questions or concerns we should be raising?
If you guys ever need anything, if you go to the department website and find the Marine Division, my direct phone number is right there, my email, so feel free.
Do you publish specs or stats in terms of the number of vests? No, is that public?
I mean, we
Publish
do, as generally as a police department, yeah. I mean, as far as particularly the Marine Division, we've never done that. But there, we obviously account for everything we do, so there are records of things.
Good luck to you.
Thank you. Yeah, like I said, if you want me to come back at the end of the season, whatever,
Well, let's just keep in touch, yeah.
Yeah.
As maybe things arise in the season, glad to have an impromptu meeting. But for starters, once a year is good, sometimes it's great. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So, my agenda is fairly light, you're all welcome to add to this, but I was just going to report on a couple things. One is the harbor dredging application. We don't have one, but I did send in my personal thoughts and some of the discussion we had to Monica as well as John Zagronsky, and said, there's about 2 years to accomplish this. It gives you a 5-year window. If we replicate the deterioration in harbor channel depth that we had in this last year, that will be an extraordinarily length of time, the 2 years to apply for the application, to wait to get at dredging. And I know there's all sorts of cost issues and the like, but I thought we ought to fill in an application. And that was $16,000, and it could be shared amongst the clubs. And I wanted to get that discussion going. Whether we all agree with that or yet, I don't know. We didn't take a formal vote on it, and I wanted to surface it with them, and if they wanted to discuss it more with us as a commission, I think that would be fine, but it's to me, an urgent issue given the application's length.
I think it's a campaign discussion, too, is to begin to prepare, I mean, is the application to and toward what? Which is the funding of the activity. So to the extent that we should also be signaling to the Board of Finance, or...
And the clubs,
And the
boat
clubs.
owners, is how it was done.
Why do the
Whoever's
clubs
allocated.
pick up the tab?
Excuse me?
Why do the clubs pick up the tab?
Well, the last time it was done, which was 90 or 91, there was an apportionment between the users of the waters. So, like, if we dredge the channel to 8 feet, but you only have a boat that drafts 1.5 feet, you might say, well, we don't have to dredge yet.
And just, people who live in town, who pay for the schools, who don't use the schools, there are all sorts of public resources that are
It was
paid even for people who don't use them.
It was accomplished last time with a sharing amongst the Darien Boat Club, the Rome Yacht Club, and large sailboat owners and the town. So there's a discussion to be had. I don't know what the right answer is. The formula that was used last time is probably the first thing, that reference point to take a look at. But, there's a 2-year window here. If the town and us, if we want to act right now, we've got a discussion going for 2 years on this.
And was there a response?
Not yet. Nope.
And how long does it usually take to get a response?
From our selectmen?
Yeah,
Well,
John, yeah.
they're all new, and I'm new working with this group, so I don't know. Yeah, to me, though, I think we should put this in real shortly.
Well, maybe to your question a little differently, is the weight of the commission more valuable than the weight of an individual member? If there is a consensus that is a good, just poking at it from a different view, Robert?
It's the same thing. I think we're trying to get to the same thing, which is, maybe if everyone's CC'd, it's clear that, that everyone feels that way. Because I thought after the last meeting, it was clear that everyone was on board.
I think that's right. No, I didn't,
I'm just thinking out loud.
yeah, no,
I'm new to this.
so at the mechanic I used to relate to them, well, I wasn't so separatist, but I didn't say the commission has voted. We didn't. I said we discussed it, and then I think I rendered it more of a informal thing that I thought they should act fast. I think there's more discussion to be had, like, it's 16, 17,000. Do we want to split that between the clubs and ourselves? We just did that with the harbor survey, third. So this is securing an option.
It's a very wise idea.
You could say that perhaps the Darien Boat Club might be picking up more of the tab, because I think they may have more square footage that needs to be drained.
Yeah,
Dredged.
there is probably an allocation that will make many uncomfortable or more comfortable.
Probably if everyone's unhappy, you're doing the right thing.
Yeah, probably, right, in that right spot. But
So I think,
just continuing, when is the funding request, but to and toward what end, which is really, if this is the right thing to do for the town and the water, people who use the waters of this town, then I think it has to also start to be part of the budget planning discussion for the Board of Finance.
Yeah.
Because we know it's $1 million project, $800,000 $1 million project. I think
it might be
should,
more.
yeah, so that should be a loss for a $16,000 tax. What we're really asking the town is to invest $1 million, either directly or apportion in some fashion. But even those who are, if you're a boat club member or a Rotary club, you're also a Darien taxpayer too, so there is an allocation for fairness here too.
I think so many of these things are to be resolved. That's why I kept that a little informal.
Gotcha.
I think, though, it begs for a more formal discussion.
I think you've done the right thing. I think there was some information presented from the the harbor depth survey that made us aware of a situation, right? The situation is that the channel's getting not as deep, correct? Okay, so as an advisory commission to Monica and the town, it's been presented that this is something that we've been made aware of. As a harbor commission, an advisory commission, this presents a problem the way that we see it and based on our knowledge in this room. And because of the timeline and the scope of the project, this group sort of feels that there should be a movement towards applying for a permit. And if at the end of the day, the worst thing that happens is $16,000 is spent and we're not ready to act on that permit at the moment it's approved or not approved, well, then we have an impasse, right? It's not approved, why? We have to figure that out and go in that direction. It's approved, it took 2 years. Are we ready to spend the money? Yes, no, maybe. Have we made any plans? Yes, so maybe. Or we have 5 years to say, we've got 5 years to actually get our act together and raise this money, or the Board of Finance to get together. But if we don't get approval, it doesn't matter if you have $1 million or $5 million to spend on it, because you don't have approval. So there's no sense in talking about it, right? Proceed forward with the application process and hopefully you get approved. If you're approved, then you can decide, yes, we need to. No, we'll turn it into a 6-inch still pond.
Do you reckon we put our shoulder behind one voice to represent the voice of the commission?
Well,
Effective now?
I was waiting to see how they'd come back. You know, they just haven't yet. It was sent up to them, I think, 2 weeks ago. So I just haven't heard back from them. But I think it's important, yeah. I think if they don't get back, I think we should shout.
Yeah, and Grant, that's the approach we took with the Pear Tree project, is it took 2 years to get the approval, and now we've got 5 years to figure out
So, I mean, I think if they say no,
what we
then
go forward. But
Well-
at least the approval's there, but it's long.
it's a long
process.
time, yeah,
It's a long-
yeah.
And this is frustrating because we were so methodical every 3 years, although we had a 1.5 year delay in the last one. Methodical, no problem, all of a sudden problem. And if we get the same repeat degradation, we'll all be screaming. The whole town will be screaming at us. So it's,
So you have a warning sign, right? And so,
well, the most minimal warning sign, we thought we would see something steady over our 12 years of testing. And all of a sudden, it was fine, and then it was boom and bad. That's not completely true around Darien Boat Club, where the last couple of years, we've had warning signs from the, but now it's spread further, if you will, into the channel. So I find this frustrating, but at least we're on it.
I think personally, I think it's a smart decision to get the ball rolling, right? Again, worst thing is, in 7 years, you know, you spent $16,000, $17,000 over the course of 7 years to get approval and you didn't act on it. There's much more foolish money spent than that in the course of, say, 7 years, if you look at the whole picture.
Yeah.
You know.
Agreed. So that sits with them. You know, I will ping them again if they don't reach out very shortly.
But,
So
Bill,
I'm hearing people's
Would it,
agreement, obviously.
as opposed to an informational email like you have given them, would it,
It was more than that. I said that they should be undertaking this.
okay,
I recommended, but I didn't put our full, I'm being a little nuanced, I didn't put our full weight behind it because I said we discussed it.
what would you like to?
You guys.
I agree with Grant. I think $16,000
I agree with you, Grant, too.
missed in one day of the annual budget cycle for Darien. We need to do this just to be given the opportunity to look.
Yeah, I don't have my verbiage, but it said we need to do this. So if you all want to take a vote.
So I
right now-
propose
Yep,
that the
right.
town spend $16,000 to get the ball rolling on the permit process for subsequent dredging.
I guess my point was, we all believe that's true.
Yep.
And we want to put a little meat on the bone.
Okay, well, I will make a point of, well,
I don't want to speak for everyone else, but I
So I was gonna
think,
say, so you proposed it, someone needs to second it?
well, I don't think that we're here to decide funding decisions for the town. I think we can decide a
Recommendation.
direction.
Correct, a
Well, I think
recommendation that.
the thing would be more recommending it go forward post haste.
But if we say we're unanimous in recommending it as an advisory commission, I think that's what we're supposed to do.
I'll carry that message forward on my seeking them out
I
again.
don't think you can make a motion if it's not on the agenda. Right? I
Are you
think
sure?
that's- I think that's true.
Yeah.
For
how
purposes
about other
of,
business?
Yeah.
Okay,
It just
so
became
Well,
other
look, the
business.
sentiment is duly noted, and the reason I sent it up without us making a vote was I felt people were behind it. Now people are expressing greater sentiment that the weight of the commission be known to be behind it. I will impart that.
Great,
That's valid.
and to the
thank you for
extent,
that work.
and to the extent the point raised is a good one, then let's put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
I think the only point is that if you're going to decide something, the public needs the opportunity to come and be able to respond, which is why there's a public hearing.
So we can put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
Yeah, on the funding issue, I think that's not really our concern as much, but I might say that given how the Harbor Channel survey has been done, that represents a template to handling the dredging application, but that's a little more, I think, for the Board of Selectmen to decide, and then for the individual clubs to agree to or not. But anyways, I appreciate you guys emphasizing this, and I'll make sure I do the same with the Board of Selectmen. Or John and Monica, who I'm using as my contacts. I don't send things off to the board, but I've been using John as the conduit and Monica as the primary also. So. My only other item is Great Island Advisory Points. Flip put together that nice memo. It was sort of a little bit notes, but it was in table form. I thought it was clear and easy to read. Everyone seemed to agree with the points. Bill Wright and Frank Kemp went out. And Bill, do you want to just describe what you did the other day in a boat? I thought it was very helpful.
Yeah, we had time on our hands, so Frank and I found a beautiful day, and we went out and actually measured that underwater hazard going up to the beautiful beach there. And it does kind of remind you of a Normandy World War II little setup there, and you're aiming for the beach, and you just rip out the body of your boat on some of the rebar. So it's 2.5 to 3.5 feet in height from dead low tide up, with the last 6 to 8 inches of rebar, probably 10 pieces of rebar located throughout, and it does reach from one end to the other end. It's 135 feet going entirely across that area. So it is a hazard. I mean, one of the ideas you could have the Department of Public Works at low tide at least cut the rebar off, and that would be a lot less painful for a swimmer or a boater going through there. And then possibly a sign that says, underwater hazard, and give people warning, because that beach looks awfully, you want to go dive your boat up to it. So that was just our thoughts, but we went and actually measured it and found out how high it was, and it does go all the way across.
Did you take pictures?
Took a lot of pictures.
What was it?
I think they put it up back in the day so that they would have a little more
Saltwater
water time.
Swimming pool.
Swimming pool, yeah, keep more water, like Holly Pond is in a way, got extra water in there, it doesn't go
What's
out.
the actual length of the sections of rebar? Is there?
Yeah, so we have some pictures too, and we did measure those, so about 2.5 feet is the stone wall that still
Okay.
remains.
Right.
And then up to maybe almost a foot in a few places are rebar. And also some posts that are made out of metal of some sort that's left of whatever they were. I don't know what they were, maybe it was another buoy system went up higher. So there's a number of those too. They'd all be easy to cut down. And you went out there with some power cutters and you'd have those things down in no time. So, and it's very accessible at low tide.
So it's below the high water mark,
Yeah.
making it Connecticut deep responsibility?
Well, yeah, when they put it up, of course, it didn't need permits, I'm sure. And
Right.
if you remove the rebar, I think you wouldn't have to get permits. After that, you would certainly have to.
Can we seek out deep assistance in getting it taken out?
Isn't the
You
bottom there
could.
privately controlled or owned? And that bottom did not come with the purchase, we were told.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I don't know how that works at all, man.
Who is the private owner?
Ziegler's, I believe, still.
Oh, they still kept the bottom rights there somehow? And didn't take that over and say, we just now, sorry, that's ours now? Back in the day?
There's a way to.
Really? You still can
Some
own
of the
bottom rights?
bottom, they're very specific to the Ziegler
Leasehold.
property.
Interesting.
Privately controlled,
Interesting.
which is,
But if
Okay.
that is an attractive nuisance, just might be a property law way of coming at that, to have them remedy that nuisance.
Beyond my pay grade.
I don't know.
Do you think it
Worth
would
Be
looking
a great
into.
exercise for the fire department, right? Like, use their,
Joseph Light, crack it open
their,
or something.
you know, gas
What's the
powered,
training?
waterproof
Police department,
tools
explosive group.
and stuff like that, right? I mean,
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah.
Is it dangerous?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, so.
If you go to Google Earth, which I love that, you look down and a number of different times they took Google Earth pictures, you can see it laying right out there.
So why don't we just put, just rub it off until it's taken away?
Sure.
That's, I think that's something we should really strongly consider, because on July 4th, there are gonna be people landing there, and we're gonna have a big problem. This goes back to what we talked about last time. And so, I think.
You can't just rope off, right?
that sort of falls
Why-
under your
I'm sorry, why?
Well, that.
expertise
It's
a
a buoy,
little
it's a,
bit.
well, yeah, but the buoys themselves that you're proposing, I think you're gonna propose, are permitted by the state.
Yeah.
Back to the-
You're our state guy, right? I hate to, no, but literally, this is a dangerous situation. We have a duty to advise the selectmen and you that this is a dangerous situation. There are people who rope off all the time with those little, here's a swim lane. We should put some signs up there, because we will be sitting here on our July meeting and there will be something bad that happened, because not everyone's gonna know that. And you can just see it at 9 o'clock in the morning, somebody's gonna say, I'd like to be on the beach, and I wanna be right there.
If you rope that off as a swimming area, and I'm not saying you want to do that.
I'm saying,
Can you do that legally as a swimming area? Let's just, I know you don't want
That
to.
needs to be permitted also.
Oh, does it?
I think
Okay.
so,
Yeah.
All right, there
Can
you
you
go.
simply get the DPW out there? I mean, I could get that rebar down with a hacksaw and files to take off the rough edges. Right? You could, it's
I
rebar.
know, that's what I'm thinking.
It's also been salt water for,
Didn't you say it's
since,
2 feet
since,
below
you know,
water?
No,
38,
at
right?
low water, you can walk right up to it.
Yeah.
I bet it's 3 hours work for a couple guys.
Yeah, so you have, when you drive a boat up there at low tide, you can't even get to it, because you bottomed out already on the exterior side.
Exactly right,
Beach. So you pull up as close as you can to it, and then it goes from that beach up to 2.5 feet.
Is this issue listed?
Dead low
Half
tide.
tide.
This is dead low tide.
So it's visible for half tide.
Yeah, so as,
From low to half.
yeah, yeah. So if you're dead high tide, good tide, you probably clear right over it.
So I
It's one of
have,
those
It's nice
medium
chair and
tides.
take out its props and dry shed if you wanted to.
Yeah. It's a hazard.
so why don't we've sent our Great Island Advisory Points up. This is on it. And why don't we, so that's another follow-up call I have with the town. Why don't we emphasize that this should be corrected now? I think it's eminently correctable with a couple guys with hacksaws and, we're talking about the rebar part.
Yeah,
It's
you
still-
take the
it's still a
rebar
wall. The
first.
rebar is the ugly, gross, right.
Well, that's the one that, because, I mean, if you hit a wall or a rock or anything with your boat, it's bad, right? But the rebar is kind of, it's a little harder to see, and you would, it sticks up further.
markers
Is there
that
somebody
say
to kind of walk along
underwater
there, try to,
hazard.
Any
Dump
kind
it
of
in the
marker
water,
you put
not
up,
knowing.
and here's why.
If you were swimming at,
It's so
just
sticky about
yeah,
this.
you could impale.
Anything that
Yeah,
you want to
wait.
add
it
to
makes
the
me
water.
nervous.
Yeah, so
needs to be
let's
added to
Again,
the
with-
shore.
emphasize that to town.
Because in
What-
theory, what happens is,
James was saying
There's a
about
buoy out
more
there.
people now
it's not on
trying
a
to
chart, the
access.
state's not aware of
And
it.
that's the beach to go to.
Someone
then.
hits
But
it,
at dead low, you could take some kind of a
roll over
power
the side,
tool.
save
Oh,
the boat. Fell off some more.
Yeah.
So it's much major.
there's too many conversations going on.
So I think it's more of a concern that something gets hurt.
Sawzall, saw
Yeah.
or something.
There should be something there, but it has to go through the state.
Got it. I just wasn't sure if that was the same,
Yeah.
we felt the same.
It's injury of another nature versus that nature. I don't know, I'm about to find out, because I want to do 5 mile an hour buoy for Ziegler's.
Okay, well,
But I imagine it will require town sign off too.
we're not gonna get the wall demoed right away, we're not gonna get the buoy up right away, so I think getting rid of the rebar would make sense, and that's, I think, controllable. So let me emphasize that with the town as something that we think should be done now, if you all agree.
Absolutely.
I just wanted to bring up the fact, you brought up the fact that there's ownership here at stake that you think of the underwater area? Is that what you're saying?
I can't imagine that anyone would object to it because the ownership at the bottom relates more to shellfishing than it does, but I think the town does not have the rights to the bottom in that area.
But the Ziegler family still does?
I don't know if they did something separate with it, they could
Okay.
have sold that separately, I don't have any knowledge of it, but I know that they controlled it prior to the sale, and that those rights did not come with it, and I don't know if you can go and do anything to the bottom.
We'll cut the rebar and throw it back in, so it still stays in the
No,
bottom.
well, maybe it's their liability.
Yeah, but we want to make things
Well,
safe.
I might be having a conversation with one of them this week. So I might approach the subject with
Yeah.
them.
Yeah,
So the state can't, there are a number of spots in our state where people own, not talking about leasing of shellfishes, but own the underwater rights.
Yes.
But from my understanding
No
is
idea.
the house on Contentment Island,
Yeah.
where the big lifting dock is, owns the islands, the fish islands.
Yeah.
Also has rights to the, the seabed.
Some, but not
For
all.
that.
The state owns the ones right
Mhm.
in front of, I think it's the state.
That's very interesting.
There's something there, I don't know the details.
You're right.
Yeah.
It's a crazy quilt of, of ownership and leases and state and town and, and it's insane.
So if they hit oil there, they get the money, not the state.
so I was going to move on to just one more item, and that is, I got a call from the First Selectman's office. There's a package there which concerns some sort of construction, engineering plans at the Rings End Bridge, and I don't know much more about it than that. I regularly get, as chairman, engineering consulting reports on dock applications and other construction activities by the water, and this is something to do with the bridge. If I have not been able to, during work hours, pick it up. If someone else would like to pick it up, take a look at it, and see if it has anything relevance to us, you'd be welcome to. It's of Linda O'Leary.
What is this, John? I'm sorry.
I thought I explained it.
It's something to do with
I
the,
regularly get consulting reports from engineers, they're
Yeah.
mostly for
on the
docks,
bridge,
but this one's on the bridge,
on the bridge.
and I have no idea.
All right, I'll pick it up.
Yeah, okay.
I'm not 100% sure what it is, but I do know that not the bridge part of it, but kind of what I would describe as the waterfall part of it, that has been significantly undermined by flooding waters. And I've seen the DPW trucks down there trying to work on it. My guess is that they're trying to buttress that.
Interesting. Well, so we get these consulting reports regularly on all construction activities. As you know from last year, we've been frustrated on the docks about us being able to have a say in what's going on at the docks. But the worst thing would be not to get the information on any of these activities to start with. So it's important to pick up whatever hits town hall, and this one's just hit town hall. So Bill, let us know. That's it for me. Next thing I was just going to suggest, we maybe rotate through various tasks. I'm not sure how much has happened on these, but maybe we can talk about pushing forward on them. First thing is Harbor Moorings Policy Committee. We've been trying to get ourselves, our work plan in place. I think, I know you did some initial work. I know we need to do some surveys of what's in our surrounding towns. Did everyone see the allocation? Did that make sense? And should we go about that? I think you were going to get a town, Rob was, Flip was, Sam, you were, and I was going to try to harmonize when they come in. And also take our initial comments in that first draft of the ordinances and try to assemble those better. So if that's an okay division of labor, I guess it's a question of when we all want to get it done.
I thought might be, let's establish a date, we'll work toward
All
that
right,
project. That would be one approach.
well, you guys want to say the end of this month? You want to give us 2 weeks?
Insufficient amount of time.
Okay. This isn't, we're not trying to write papers on this, though, we're just trying to come up with some sort of simple tables.
Again,
Okay,
I couldn't set it for 2 weeks.
okay.
What about the next meeting?
All right, by next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay. Sounds good. Let's see, so water quality testing. Julie, I think you're making the most inroads on that one.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, we've been a little bit delayed this year because Save the Sound didn't have all the equipment in working order. There were some sensors missing. They sent out some new songs, but they weren't complete. So we finally got those near the end of, what month is it? End of May, or, yeah.
June.
June?
June 22nd.
Oh, June 22nd, I'm still. So, and then travel plans sort of interfered. We're hoping to get out this Friday and on our first water quality testing, and we're not that far behind because of the delay in the equipment. So I think we're pretty close to where other teams are, but hopefully we'll have a good season.
And David, you're joining the team, I guess, with your boat.
Special guest.
I see
Which
great
is
regularity in this.
Very much appreciated.
Sam has stepped up with his boat. and-
Well, Sam has in principle stepped up with his boat, but Sam has some family-related issues that are completely interfering with any other kind of activity.
But if you fall in love with the early mornings, you will always be a
Which are
welcome
beautiful.
addition.
Beautiful on the water.
Beautiful in the
It's
water.
much better than clamming, much better.
Sounds good.
Thank you for Friday's help, cross our fingers on weather. Shellfish stocking, that's not happened yet. We certainly hit 50
No.
degrees.
Tom and
Probably
I were
about-
gonna go out and put some markers down, and we didn't do that.
Yeah, and we did a night first going to Home Depot and getting the markers, right?
I have a bunch of markers for,
But I think even more than that, to set a date with the freights, and if anyone wants to join that, John Zagroski had an interest, but he's away for 3 weeks. I suggest we just go forward with it, get what selectmen we can.
And the objective is to seed the beds? Is that, I just want to make sure I've got
The drop full clams. Right on target,
for
like.
the purpose of seeding.
yeah.
And David knows the beds very well, so his idea is to get stakes down so that when we go out, they're really deposited correctly, which I like.
It's easy to figure out at low tide, if you can't get his boat in there at low tide, and at high tide, by putting them where they're accessible or not, I think you just need some points of reference on both sides.
The stakes have to be.
And that's in Scott's Cove, right? Is that where you
It's on
mainly?
either side of Scott's Cove, there's the Contentment Island bed, and then there's the, why can't I remember this? What's the other?
Salem Straits?
No. Contentment Island. Great Island bed.
Yeah.
Of course. And so there are little strips on either side of the mouth of Scott's Cove.
And you just drop in quahogs in, basically.
Yes, well, you'd like the smaller clams, and that's historically been what the contract has been, but I don't know what the current state of play is.
They owe us a seasons, and they nicely called us back saying we owe you a season, and so this is where we are, and so that's nice. Yeah, so why don't I will call them and get their date. I'm so busy, I'm not sure I can do the stake thing, even though we talked about that. But let's take it one step at a time and get a target date with them, and then we'll see how we can work.
The other project that you and I were going to undertake, I think last year, which we didn't do, was the sign which I put in, which seems to have blown away, despite my putting many hundreds of pounds of rocks around a stake to keep.
You took the one on the edge of Scott's, and that's still there, it's just on its side.
Oh, it is? Oh, I didn't get
I kayaked there the other day
Okay.
and saw that, it's just on its side, which I think the state probably did, because it's no longer, it no longer effectively shows the quadrants, I think, because I think it's changed with the map.
Oh, really? All right. Well, maybe we'll
We have to revisit
talk
that.
about that offline and figure it out.
Right, but it's there. It's just really nicely down, which made me think the state did it.
Okay.
Which might have been when we went to prohibitive, perhaps they did it at that point. And it's up for us to put it back up. All right, I know Jim Furlong was interested in going out on the boat to do the restocking. David, I trust you'd be on it to help guide, even though the stakes are being put down. I think, it's like, let's do 2/3 here, 1/3 here.
Whatever you want me to do, I'll do.
Okay, has anyone else got an interest in that? Going out, sort of fun?
I'll do it.
I'll come if you.
Yeah, I'd like to do it too. I'll see what it's like.
All right,
Fun.
8:30.
No, it's neat. I mean, these guys are working on the water. It's pretty neat to see the whole operation. I find that, it's a little unlike the recreation boats. Let's see, debris cleanups. How is anybody feeling for organizing one of those?
I think I volunteered to do that some meetings ago.
It's a great team builder.
I'd be happy to organize one for this summer.
I'd definitely be happy to join. It's really a lot of fun, actually. Have you guys seen the pictures from prior seasons? I mean, I think we got, if my memory serves, 304 pounds of trash. I think that's correct. So it's sort of like,
Fun might be an overstatement.
So, speaking of debris, how many of you have picked up those Mylar balloons in the waters? You've
Oh, yeah.
seen
all
them?
the time, yeah.
And just for fun, how many of you have seen Mylar balloons hanging from people's mailboxes here in town over the past 2 weeks, in lieu of graduation
Yeah.
or anything else? There's some percentage of those Mylar balloons that wind up floating up and then landing on our waters. And I have no idea how much, but I personally probably pick up, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 a year. I'm sure if you do that across all the boating community, there's got to be hundreds that are picked up in any given year.
Yeah.
And I wonder if there's anything that we can ever recommend that would be acceptable to people to use instead of Mylar. So I think Mylar's got a shelf life or a half-life of about 500 years, and rubber balloons, at least much less.
I don't think they're going to change demand in the supply chain, but where I think we can make an impact on these debris cleanups, what Save the Sound does and what we've actually done also is catalog what you collect. And so if you collect it and publicize it, that helps to demonstrate something. And I think standing with the trash helps to demonstrate something. And if you have a great Mylar balloon collection that season, to lay them out like, partridges you shot, I think helps. This is part of environmental work, which requires some action, but probably more a louder bullhorn. And I think
Yeah.
that's what's needed.
I
We
think
did get
that,
rid of plastic bags in town, though.
that's true. And Connecticut no longer has any active landfills because we've filled them all up. And so now we're exporting our waste, and there's an enormous drive statewide to reduce waste throughout the state. And that's a great way to highlight, a bigger problem that we're all dealing with.
And so I think that debris cleanup is larger than it looks. And I think if we get, I really love the last couple ones we did, and I think, but Monica came down like that. She saw the photo op in it, and both for herself as well as for the cause. And Jim Palin also joined. They were right on it. They understand the power of a message. And I really think to have this commission behind it, as many of us showing up that day and trying to beat 304 pounds and more black bags and cataloging what's there and making a message, I think it's a powerful thing. So if David would set a date, I'm definitely coming. And I'd welcome you all to do that. And
I'd like to argue
Fantastic.
for burlap bags this year. Maybe we won't contribute any more
part to that.
plastic to the landfill.
I was using up my supply in the garage, yeah.
Are there other organizations in town that already have a plan to this effect?
Yes, so like, and
The multiplier effect.
yeah, so, well, Save the Sound does, I think this is in September, October, a International Coastal Cleanup Day, and they'll sponsor it, and they will seek out groups within Darien to handle the various beaches. I'm quite frankly okay on letting the beaches go, because the beaches are easy, there's not a lot of trash compared to around the shorelines. Anyway, what I encountered organizing this a couple years in a row was that Girl Scout groups had a couple beaches.
Yeah.
I was really impressed and felt really behind. that we hadn't like tackled that 10 years ago and laid claim to it, right?
Yeah, the
But we-
Darien Scouts did Weed Beach last weekend, and as I said, it was
Fantastic.
mostly beer cans. But we did have an Eagle Scout project, I think I mentioned the last meeting, which is complete now. They're over by the kayak racks, and it's a beautiful stand. There's 6 logoed buckets where people can take the bucket, collect trash on the beach, and then there's a garbage can right there to fill it in. So that went in just over a week ago. It looks terrific.
Because these other groups do this, it's sort of low-hanging fruit. If you have an environmental attitude, you can go to the beach and do a cleanup day. I'd love the idea of us doing the harder to reach spots, the coastal areas. I mean, I know when I kayak up and down Darien, I'm appalled at how much trash I see in the jetty rocks and that sort of thing. I love the idea, like Flip led us on to, there's a land trust property. Flip, I'm forgetting the name.
Juniper Lane, that area.
Goodwives Meadow.
Goodwives Meadow, right, where our 75 or 100 pounds swelled to 304 really quickly because it was like a catchment area. And so that catchment area might be there one day, but it's bound to be in the harbor another. So I love the fact that we might have inside knowledge and harder to reach places and more of a bullhorn also, is to use our special skills.
And that stretch of Pear Tree Point Road that goes from more or less the boat ramp north along the river is just a collection point in all the tall grass.
We did that last year, that
It's
section.
always collects.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Yeah, that's discouraging. And you can see it,
Mylar.
but a lot of people can't get to it. So they don't want to walk in the
No,
mud.
because there's a wall.
Yeah,
There's a big seawall.
so I think we can offer something that like a Girl Scout troop probably wouldn't want to walk in that muck, and I don't blame them. And for us to do that, and it's got high impact.
Holly Pond as well. There's the marshes.
They need to go at low tide.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at a tide chart as we sit here. How about something like 10 a.m. on July 8th, Saturday?
I'll go for it. Everyone want to check their calendars and sign up for that? Why don't we use it as a working assumption? And David, you send around a confirmation email and everyone can click in? You know, these things are just 2 hours.
So what do? Bring our own burlap or large compact contractor bags, as the case may be?
Some gloves, a knife to cut the rope out of the jetties, and some boots because you're going to get muddy.
Gloves. Takes one.
And I think we have to scout some areas to figure out what's going to be lucrative. So like flipping the meadows is great. Now, we've got to double check that. I think there's a new dock down there, so I worry about whether we can have the same access. But
Yeah, no, the access should be the same.
did you know the new dock I'm talking
Other
about?
land trust property.
Okay.
There's other land trust property on near water
Most of those little
that borders Holly Pond.
Right,
That
that marsh area.
is full of garbage.
Okay, well, we'll do a little pre-July 8th survey and see what we come up with.
It's crazy.
All right, well, is that it for tasks? Maybe John Kina, do you want to perhaps give us?
You're
Philip,
talking
your
about
activities?
item 4 or item 5 now?
Item 5.
Yeah, so, before I get started on Darien, I just wanted to make everybody aware of a situation that's taking place in Norwalk that may or may not affect Darien waters. I'm sure many of you know the train trestle that goes over the Norwalk River. They've taken down the IMAX theater and they're preparing to, do that bridge work. There's going to be a lot of barges that are going to be brought into Norwalk Harbor. That's going to be displacing a number of recreational vessel moorings. I'm also being told that there may be some barges off of Greens Ledge Lighthouse. And I don't know if they'll be in Darien or Norwalk waters yet. I know at one point back in the 80s we had a barge mooring out in the middle of, probably out from Ziegler's or so. But once I find out more, the harbor master in Norwalk couldn't give me any more detail than that right now. But he's faced with the challenge of finding homes for all these boats that are going to be displaced in Norwalk Harbor.
John, wouldn't that be like notice to mariners, or, that has to be a U.S. Coast Guard permitted function?
I would assume so. I mean, it's the Department of Transportation that, is spearheading this project. I don't know what conversations or agreements they have with DEEP, and I haven't seen anything come in my inbox, email inbox from the state. It's only word of mouth that I've had with the harbor master of Norwalk. So there'll probably be more coming, and I'll stay in touch with him to see what he hears, because he's most likely going to hear about it before I do. I'm just not exactly sure where, coming out of 5 Mile River, if you split the middle, I mean, Green's Ledge is on the Norwalk side. Where Darien actually, the waters would start to the west of Green's Ledge Lighthouse. So I'm not really sure where they would put it, whether it would affect Darien waters or not. But I don't recall any kind of mooring lights in the 80s on that barge that was out there.
One of those broke free and
That
then
barge
up on the
anchor was there
shore.
until the 90s probably, or
Probably, yeah.
early 2000s, right? I mean,
I don't know how, but I remember in the
Remember that.
80s, I don't remember when it was removed. All right, so just give you a quick update. I have approved 236 moorings so far. I have 12 outliers. I have a large number of people on approval hold. That's just a holding pattern for reassignments. As I said before, we had a total of about 35 moorings for Darien Harbor that we identified were open. 16 or 17 have been identified. I think somewhere in the neighborhood of about 14 or 15 have been fulfilled. I know the contractors in Darien Waters have been working very diligently. They've been up against weather, wind and smoke and everything else we've had over the past few weeks. But one of the things that I am going to be working on once the contractors are more caught up, is something I've discussed, is the moorings to the north of the Darien Boat Club. Many of them are in poor condition. There's boats up there that were permitted, but there doesn't seem to be a sense of ownership amongst the people that are up there. And the moorings have started to fail. So it's going to be my plan to start moving those boats out of that area north of the club and moving them out into the harbor. We have a large number of moorings out there that they can be occupied. There's probably about 6 boats back there that can be moved out. And that way we can clear them out, and then I can work with the contractors. I know you're listening, Flip. To see if we can place new moorings in there.
Yep.
I know we have a list of people with smaller boats. It would be ideal to put them up there. My plan is to put whalers, cathedral hull vessels up there, shallow draft. It's a more appropriate place. Lighter tackle can be placed in there. So that's just one of the things I'm working on. But it's contingent upon the availability of the contractors. So I know they're very busy right now. I know there's been a lot of equipment that they've had to go over. Much of it needed to be replaced. So, but we're making progress. We're making progress.
John, just so I'm clear, the mooring field on the north, those are abandoned moorings? Do I understand that correctly?
No, there are some people who are permitted there.
Right.
There's been people who have been permitted there. That was what I call was intended to be abandoned because of the boat club's intention to expand. So some people have moved up there. They were permitted, but there's no one that's really been willing to go up there and maintain the tackle. Jeff Eng did it for a number of years, and then he stopped doing it. And I've had conversations with the Norotan Yacht Club about going back up there, and correct me if I'm wrong, Flip, sounds like something we want to do.
Yeah, and just for members of the commission, one of the things John and I have talked about is maybe going up there on a Saturday and inviting you all to kind of join us on the mooring barge if you want to see how these things are done. These are up where John is talking about. These are all small moorings in poor condition, so it'll be pretty easy stuff. But if anyone's interested in joining us, that might be an outing.
Are the people who have approved moorings, are they in favor of being relocated, these different locations?
Most of them have been good with it, but some of the people that I've approached, I've asked them, can you show evidence of your winter stick service? I already knew the answer to the questions. Show me evidence of your winter stick service. Show me evidence of your inspections. And many of them are like, oh, well, I just sort of was placed here. So I don't even really sure they know the rules of it. And there were more that came back. There's actually one person who can't come back right now because it's up in that area, everything is stem to stern high up. And he lost a bow or stern a buoy this winter. And he can't swing just off the bow because he'd be in the fairway of the Darien Boat Club on an outgoing tide. There was another one that broke loose in that chain also. And there's also 3 buoys that are up off of, they're the farthest 3 north. One of them is permitted. The other one, I don't know that there is a permit for it. But those have been abandoned moorings for quite some time. I actually had to tell someone they had to get off of it very recently. Very, very large boat, just had no business being there. It's actually on a dock now. On a dock right in that area. You know, this big square lot that comes out and juts into the harbor, way up north of the boat club. There's a dock there that boat is on now. I originally found it back in April on those 3 moorings, and those moorings are in such disrepair. Too large of a boat for the tackle that's there, and the tackle's terrible.
And those have been there for, I'd say, 4 or 5 years without a boat. It's been quite a while.
It's been quite some time.
Yeah.
But I mean, they really haven't been maintained since Jeff Eng did them, and he stopped doing it many, many years ago. So
They've jumped up that area, so I'd like to see nice crisp boats, in line or get them out. Yeah, I'm appreciative of you doing that.
I mean, I do have some people who said they have maintained them, but I don't know how well or when. So my intention is just that all needs to be cleared out and made right so that they can be permitted for boats that should be up there, very shallow draft boats.
Well, I like that also because we've talked about in the harbor light-kinding boats, right? You can maximize the use of the harbor by light-kinding. I mean, you shouldn't have someone graduating, we've talked about this, from a 20-foot center console to a 40-foot boat and keeping their same spot right off of Norotan Yacht Club. They should be going further out. And so this is in that vein, working through time the common-sized boats and areas.
We addressed some of that issue last year as well as the beginning of this season also. We've moved boats that were in closer, out farther, in keeping with the size of the boats that are out there.
I was going to ask you, by the way, I was out on the weekend, saw a motorboat, I guess is a larger motorboat, maybe 28-footer, but on the very edge of the harbor, most southern edge. Is there a fellow who's out there regularly? I mean, he's out beyond all the sailboats, large sailboats. Or maybe he was just lying there for...
East side or west side?
West side.
there is a large sailboat that arrived last year. I believe it was the first year that it was there.
This is a motorboat beyond the sailboat, so.
I think they're servicing his mooring,
Is that so? So he was just out there temporarily? Yeah.
because then he was
Surprised
back
me.
further in
Okay.
the other day. So I think
I haven't seen
I
that.
think they were pulling the mooring and servicing it. They put him on like one of those yacht club gas moorings out far, and then it switched back. So I'm sure it was just a temporary.
Temporary, yeah. The other thing I was gonna ask you is, I was out 2 weekends ago and I saw the rock buoy was not there, the one that's on the eastern side as you leave, there in Harbor.
It's there now.
It's there now, yeah, I know. Is that under your purview, or do we always count on your own yacht club to get that out?
Well, that was permitted. It broke loose last year. So I informed the yacht club to put another one in and build a town. So that one is permitted.
So they just were a little slow in getting it out. I think just last week.
It broke it towards the end of the season,
All right.
and the yacht club ordered everything, and they put it in this spring.
I saw some boats cutting that corner close. I cringed watching one motorboat go
Yeah.
by and said to my wife, just watch this. It's
Yeah.
ugly. Nothing happened though. I said,
Yeah. Other than that, it's, you know, I'm working on the permitting. I still have 12 people who are still outstanding. I've freed up 4 moorings in Ziegler's. So there'll be some happy people this summer, because the wait list for Ziegler's Cove is notoriously long.
What would cause that to, these people abandon, John? What would cause the ability to free them up?
Asking for their paperwork. They don't have a boat anymore.
Papers.
Or they've sold their boat to someone else, and then they continue to they sell the boat to a friend, and then the friend goes and uses it, and I found situations where people continue to fill out paperwork or to redo the renewals, but there was never any requirement of evidence in the past. So now that there is, I'm uncovering these situations.
What are you asking them to put as far as mooring tackle in, now that you got an opportunity for some new ones?
I have one person who went from a 17-footer to a 31-footer, and the tackle that was there was not even to like what I call berthing standards. So I advised him, you're going to want to go to whatever the standard is. I said, but I will let you know up front, there may be a change in that. And he said, well, tell me what you think it's going to be changed to, and I'll go to that.
Yeah, get them on the big one. man.
So I think he's going to arrange to have a fairly large mooring put in.
Great.
And the other 3, I would suggest the same.
Well, the other, I'm focusing on the berthing harbors right now. The day harbors are easy, because you know those people already have a place to stay. So if you just call them up and say, hey, would you like a mooring in Ziegler's Cove? They're usually pretty quick to react and say, yes, I'll take it. Trying to find people for a berthing harbor, it's a lot more difficult. They don't have boats. You know, it just takes longer.
I'm just thinking the last conversation we had together, we were talking about maybe considering, since Great Island is now part of Darien, that the day harbor boats in Ziegler's Cove, all of those moorings would be much bigger. I think you suggested 1,000 or 2,000 pounds. And maybe we would try to suggest that that should be a special situation. And I know we'd have to deal with the state.
Special situation as far as?
We had talked about it being potential.
Transient moorings?
Yeah, the transient moorings, yeah. That those moorings, those day moorings, would need to be bigger. We've talked about that a couple times tonight. And you had suggested that that would be a good idea.
Well, I'm talking about larger tackle overall for private moorings. If you want to start talking about transient, that's a whole nother story. There's an application process.
I think, from what I heard, I think that was just a mix-up of words. I think what you're saying is, the last meeting, there was some conversation about you had the idea to increase the standard of mooring tackle
Right.
in Ziegler's Cove.
Right.
And And I think the question was, are those, the 4 new ones, gonna start that trend where, since there are new moorings going in, like, hey, we're working towards this.
I will approach it the same way as I did with the first person.
I was
What I'll
just
say
trying
is, here's what's possibly coming down the road. You can either buy the standard, or in anticipation of what most likely will change, you may want to pony up for the extra larger mooring to avoid the hassle next season.
Do it over.
Or the season after
That's what I was
that.
trying to.
I think that's what you're trying, yeah.
So that's what I said, how about the other three?
Oh, I'm
Since
sorry.
person number
I
one
missed
said,
it.
yeah, I'll do that.
Somehow I thought we were on the transient track, because that hasn't
No.
come up for times.
No. I just think it, as fast as we can make that new policy is a good thing.
Yeah. Right now, I don't have a leg to stand on. I can't tell somebody they have to buy a 1,000-pounder if they have a boat that's significantly smaller than that. But I will give them the heads up and let them know. And
That's fair.
most people will, most people probably will comply if they know it's coming.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
That was helpful, thank you.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
I had a question for direction-wise. Someone who lives on not Holly Pond, is it Gorms Pond behind the Rings End Bridge, is that
Yeah,
correct?
Gorms.
Gorms Pond asked me the other day, when the dredging of Darien Harbor was brought about and the depth survey and stuff, who in town, or who would the commission recommend communicating about the water depth in Gorms Pond? The Friends of Gorms Pond. Okay. It was a resident on the pond, and they asked me if I knew who they should start a conversation with about the depth issue there, because I think it's getting pretty shallow and
Is that White Charter?
has
That's
some
what we're
issues.
asking. Is that in our charter?
No.
Well, she asked me because we were
There's
close
been
to.
a long series of conversations on that. That's actually private property. The people who live on the road, they own out to the middle of the river. So they have to figure it out themselves.
So it would be the Friends of Gorms Pond is who I would direct her to.
We have them at the commission, by the way. There's a woman who heads that, I'm forgetting her name right now.
Yeah, I think so.
We've had them on the commission, and they've tried to coordinate some things. They open the floodgates a couple times a
Yeah.
year, and so whatever's in there comes
Yeah.
out during that period.
I will just pass on the information that it's their problem. She asked if it was under our purview.
That
Really
that
not.
is a fairly intractable problem.
It's been going on since
Yeah.
like the dawn of time, I think.
Fairly, been about 3 or 4 years, so.
The number I heard
Yes.
is very high.
The best thing for us is that that's not part of our scope.
Okay.
I will pass that along, thank you.
Is there other business that people would like to bring up?
Hey, Bill, could I add one thing?
Yes.
I don't know. Bill, this Flip, could I add one thing?
Yes, please, Flip, go ahead.
I just wanted to let the commission know that, and John, you're well aware of this, that the Norotan Yacht Club is in the process of seeking Connecticut deep permits for our 14 club moorings. And as part of that application process, I need to deliver to the commission. I'm spearheading that effort at Norotan, but we will need to deliver to the commission a copy of our application. So I just wanted to give the commission a heads up that at some point in the not too distant future, you'll see that. These are 14 moorings that have been in the water for a long time. These are not new moorings. Historically, Tom Bell and Bob Price had permitted them through the harbor master function. And I think as part of John getting up to speed with his duties, he has realized that, at least it's Deep's position, that those moorings of a yacht club should be properly permitted by Deep and not the town harbor master. So there's no actual change out in the harbor. It's a change of regulatory authority. And Bill, I need to get an address from you as where I can send this
Yep.
package.
Yeah, I saw that and I didn't quite know what to suggest. I was trying to understand it. Yeah, I'll give you my personal address, that's fine, Flip. Easier for me to pick up that way.
Flip, question for you.
Yeah, I think your home address is fine. I need to send it by certified mail. It's one of those things.
Yeah, that'd be fine.
Hey, Flip, it's Rob. I have a question for you. I had heard that Tokenique is doing something similar. Have you
Yes.
heard that?
They are, they're doing the exact same. I set
But-
them on that track also.
But on 5, I think they're only like
They
5.
told me on 3.
Oh, 3,
I
okay.
don't actually know what Tokenique is doing, although I don't think Tokenique has that many club moorings. I mean, there are
Right.
moorings in front of Tokenique, but those are private, most of those are private owners, but I don't know what Tokenique is doing.
I think John does, so thank you.
There are private moorings over in that area,
Yeah.
but Tokenie Club has 3. They called me up this spring, they called me up this spring and said that they were doing away with their sailing program, and they wanted to turn those into transient moorings for their members. And that's when I set them on the same path as the Norotan Yacht Club. By definition, I'm not allowed to permit those.
Is that it for everybody? Then, motion to adjourn,
So moved. Seconded.
and we will adjourn. Nice meeting you all. Next meeting is July 10th.